Jennifer, did you want to share your screen for your presentation so you can click as you need to?
Do you have it on yours? It would take me a few minutes to pull it up.
I heard it for a second again.
Sorry about that. Yep, I do have it on mine as well, but I just figured if you wanted to share it, you could change the slides as you require.
Sure. It'll just take me a few minutes here to pull it up on my computer.
Sure.
Nice to see everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy
You feel like you're getting out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, big night out on the town. So Deputy Mayor Lackey is not going to be joining us tonight. He sent his regrets. We got we were missing Councillor Ohlke. Okay. Kim, have you heard from Councillor Ohlke at all?
I have not, no.
Okay.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. He's connecting. He's here.
He's here. Oh.
He's here. We just can't see him.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
How do I fix that? Oh, there we go.
There he is.
I did it.
There he is. And we've stuck our CAO back in the back building, in the back room with the TV. The poor CAO has been relegated back to the back closet.
It's definitely a big screen.
It's uncomfortable being this close to this much exercise equipment.
Especially so early in the new year.
2 more, 3 more.
A lot of resolutions were made.
I notice a new face here, Jennifer Baril.
Visitor Center.
She's with the Gananoque Visitor Center.
Okay. So
Hi.
we have a visitor from the visitor center. Usually we have them from other planets, you know, but anyway.
Pleased to be here.
Thank you. Nice for you to show up. Yeah. Let's see.
Yes, she usually sees me in different attire.
Looking very comfortable there tonight, Councillor Mabee.
Yeah, well, I am streaming from home, so we'll see how this works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we get started, everyone, essentially I'll be doing the same thing as I did the last meeting. I'll be asking for a mover and a seconder for all the motions because we're not in person and we can't pass them around and have them done ahead of time. So, and then when I ask to call the question, all those in favor, you just signify by putting your hand up. And if you need me to recognize you to speak, just make sure that I see your hand. I'll give you a bit of a nod. We're good. I know we've been doing this for a while, but it's been a while over Christmas holidays that we've had a bit of a data dump in our brains. So just a little refresher there. And I think we have all the staff except our Director of Operations. I think we're missing him currently, but he's not on the docket this evening. Is there anyone else I'm missing, Clerk?
No, just the Director of Community and Business Services is away, but she does. I think, Marnie, you're going to cover her reports for her. Is that right? Sorry, you're muted. Everyone's been muted again. Sorry.
Okay, so we have 2 more minutes, so we'll wait to get started. And I guess I should have my agenda pulled up. There we go. Okay, 1 more minute. We'll start right on time. We'll try to get everybody out of here at a reasonable hour. And there's our Director of Operations. So we got the full gamut except Director of Community and Business Services, who is away this time. Okay, so we're at 6:30. So I will call the meeting to order. Any declaration of interest or general nature thereof? Does anybody have an interest to declare? Seeing none, we'll move on to delegations and presentations. And today we have Jennifer Baril from Visitor Center in Gananoque. So she'll be doing sort of a slide presentation, I believe. And we got the slide deck in our package, but she'll going to share her screen and that sort of thing, I believe.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Share screen. All right. Good evening, Mrs. Mayor, councillors and staff. I am excited to present the Visitor Center Annual End of Season Report. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay, good. All right, so our vision hasn't changed too much over the years. It's we want to recognize the importance of promoting this area as a unified region, encouraging visitors to extend their stays and support the businesses within the township of Leeds and Thousand Islands and the town of Gananoque. Over the past 7 years, the Visitor Center has established a thriving center that offers exceptional service and information, creates a strong connection to the local businesses and business community, and enhances the visitor's experience. All right. Our goals and objectives are to act as representatives and welcome visitors on behalf of the township of Leeds and Thousand Islands and Gananoque, to provide outstanding service, to promote tourism-based businesses and all businesses actually in the township and Gananoque, to utilize technology to engage visitors, to use consistent messaging that represents the beauty and unique appeal of our area, and to provide customized information based on unique needs of each visitor, because everybody has a different desire for what that experience looks like. Also, to work with local, regional, and binational organizations to develop a cooperative approach to tourism and to be ambassadors to the community. And I think we do a really good job of all those things. All right, so here is pretty much 2020. COVID hit, and we were faced with a number of challenges, including our office was closed, but we were still getting inquiries. So we maintained our business hours, and we responded to emails and telephone inquiries. Visitors kept coming to the door. I could see them outside my window, which made me feel really bad, not being able to provide that level of service. There was actually one visitor I was on the phone with inside the window, and he was standing outside the window, and we were just talking through the window. So we adjusted. We put a table out there on the doorsteps because we couldn't have anybody in. We put a plexiglass barrier on the doorstep. We had sanitizer, we had masks, and we stood out there and we provided front porch service, and people loved it. And then with the changing provincial regulations that kept happening, still are happening, we stayed on top of them, and you know, we were able to help with the guidelines and inform visitors and the community with, you know, how businesses were operating, who was open, their hours, things like that. Lots of patio restaurants and things like that. So we learned a new way to operate, and protecting our staff, and visitors is our priority. So we adjusted operations to deliver services safely, such as the plexiglass barriers, sanitizers, gloves, masks, vigorous cleaning. And thanks to the provincial and federal grants, we were able to hire 4 full-time students, and we were open for 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our staff worked in pairs to ensure provincial guidelines were followed, and the capacity of the office was adjusted to meet those social distancing requirements. So COVID-19 didn't stop us. Although live theater programming was canceled at both the Royal Theatre and the Thousand Islands Playhouse, we continued to encourage folks to check out the live musical events in the park and online. And due to limited capacity, nearly all attraction third-party ticket sales were discontinued, but we still continued to support all businesses with recommendations, referrals, and phone calls. All advertising fees were waived at the visitor center. We decided that would be how we were going to help out all our partnering businesses, to give them a little bit of extra support this year. We certainly all needed it. And then we also continued to support all the businesses in the town and the township, like we do continuously throughout every year. Helping businesses is our next slide. This is how we helped in some ways. We directed visitors to online booking and resources to assist with planning. We listened to visitors and mapped out custom itineraries based on their interests. We worked with attractions, campgrounds, accommodations, and restaurants to communicate with visitors, and we referred visitors to restaurants and businesses based on their itineraries. So if somebody was going to Rockport, say, to take a boat cruise there, we weren't going to recommend they have dinner, say, at the Junction or in Gananoque. We would certainly recommend they visited Cornwall's Pub or the Ivy or Donnelly's on the River. All right, and then tourism development. This year, we assisted our tourism partners in directing visitors to the activities that were open and relaying the safe protocols that were in place. Working with TIUP and the Thousand Islands Gananoque Chamber of Commerce to develop and implement a strategy to promote tourism with safe messaging, people still wanted to know if it was safe to come and what was open and whether or not they should come. People had family here they were calling about, they were worried about, they still wanted to see them. And they wondered if they could. So we were probably the first line of communication that a lot of people went through this year. We promoted businesses, live and virtual events again. And to date, there's a little change here because now I've answered over 700 phone calls and over 100 email inquiries. So this is fun. This is who came to visit this year. Or last year, I guess now, 2020. We have welcomed over 7,500 visitors. It's down a bit, well, quite a bit. What we usually see is around 37,000 when our international borders are open, but 7,500 rubber tire travelers. And we partnered with the Marina and Thousand Islands History Museum, and we collected 153 surveys, which provided us with some much needed statistics, such as 44% of the visitors that came were here for the first time. 77% stayed overnight, 49% between the ages of 45 and 65, were between the ages of 45 and 65. 84% of these visitors said that they were not willing or would not have been willing to cross the border, even if it had been open. because they didn't feel safe, but they felt safe staying on our side. Who were these people? They were here for birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, and a lot of them were here for the first time, looking for that. What are we going to do? We have vacation time. We can't go south. We can't go to Europe. Let's go to the Thousand Islands, and bam, here they were. It was wonderful. Cycling was huge. Even though we might not have the amount of people visiting that we normally would see, the amount of people that were actually here looking for a bicycle or bringing their bicycle was amazing. I would say 1 out of every 3 people that I saw this summer had a bicycle helmet on their head. So we saw more people who wanted to participate in local bicycle tourism. People felt that it was a safe experience that they could enjoy. And we still handed out hundreds of the Eastern Ontario cycling maps. We strive to cover most of the basic needs at our visitor center with clean washrooms, water bottle refill station, and a bicycle repair station. And we found like having our public washroom open was huge this year because it was really challenging for people to find a place where they could go if they were even out just with a day trip. So it was good. And then of course with MTO not opening up the washrooms at the beginning of the parkway, it wasn't too far for people to come into town. So it worked out pretty good. So in 2021, this is our next steps. We're looking for new ways of using technology to help serve our businesses and visitors, such as digital marketing screens. We realized that the normal passing out rack cards is probably not going to be something that we're again allowed to use this year because it's not considered sanitary for multiple people to touch the same piece of paper. So digital would be a great way for us to get around that. And this will help us to continue to provide outstanding customer service. It will also be something that's available after hours because people can see it through the window. We want to increase our partnership opportunities such as experiences, tickets, passes to area parks, attractions, and events. We are looking to establish a Travel Thousand Islands Facebook page to complement, but not duplicate what is already being done. We want to share positive information, blogs, posts, and stunning photos of the region. And the idea behind this is the page is to operate more like a visitor center. We also need and want to update and revamp the Travel Thousand Islands website. We offer this free website directory to all businesses in the township of Leeds and Thousand Islands and Gananoque. And Travel Thousand Islands attracts over 30,000 visitors to the page annually. So we're currently refreshing photos and updating listings and the content that's on there. So then this is from every year we have a book that people can write comments in. This year I couldn't put it out. So this is actually from the year before and some of the businesses that I reached out to that gave us a little bit of good tidings, I guess. And I won't read them all out to you. And then I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me and hearing me. And we look forward to another great year with you guys. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
So I can't see everyone when you're still sharing the screen. So if you wanted to unshare your screen, and then I can see everybody and see if anybody's hands up. There we go. We have Councillor Ohlke who has a question, and I'll recognize anyone else. Go ahead, Councillor Ohlke.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Quite good. And I looked through the pre-package that we received today. One thing jumped out and hit me between the eyes, as frequently does, is that I didn't notice anything about the Frontenac Arch Biosphere or UNESCO World Heritage Site. There is a group called the Frontenac Arch Biosphere, who do things and do promote the region, I think mostly amongst themselves, really. But I wonder what connection you might have with them and with our Conservation Authority. Thank you.
So thank you for your question, Councillor Ohlke. We promote Frontenac Arch Biosphere to most of our visitors that walk in because they have great hiking trails, biking trails, and paddling trails on their website. So it's our resource. We also have a great big huge canvas poster promoting the Frontenac Arch Biosphere in our visitor center. We also a lot of people come into the visitor center asking where the Frontenac Arch Biosphere is. So it's the start of a big conversation because they don't realize it's such a big, vast area. And yes, we do, depending on the person that comes in, we do promote the UNESCO World Heritage Sites and such as that. Having you ask me about that will make me make sure I add it to my next presentation. But definitely, like, we have an incredible area, like from all points, and we're kind of like try to make little road trips, things to do if we can get people, like, if you're going this way, you know, like say you're going up to Haskets Point, you know, we want you to stop in at Ridgeway because, well, it's fantastic. And then, you know, you can swing by, see the most beautiful old bridge in Lyndhurst, get some nice photos, visit the Green Gecko, go and see donkeys, you know, go into Wings. They have amazing First Nations items and things like that there. So get a kayak and go paddling. Like, it's beautiful up there. Like the whole area, Wendy's, you could go even past and go and get bikes or paddle on the Rideau with Rideau Tours. Like, our whole area is just fantastic. It's not just islands. And I think sometimes people forget that. I'm sorry, did I answer it or did I just like go off?
Go ahead, Councillor Ohlke. Do you have any follow-up?
Just, I'd like to see you mention the other Chamber of Commerce, which is Lyndhurst Sealy's Bay, and that picks up things like various farms that people can visit and purchase things, and various other displays that are in the Northland that may not be in the Gananoque Thousand Islands Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
They are actually one of our partners. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. So, Councillor Mabee, you have questions?
Yes, thank you, Worship, and through you. I have more of a personal experience with the Thousand Islands Gananoque Chamber of Commerce, or the Visitor Center, having been there on my other professional kind of activities, and I have been in the Visitor Center many times, visiting with people who are there to see what they can find in our local area. And having been there 2 or 3 times this past year during COVID, seeing the protocols that were put in place to ensure the safety of all the people that were visiting, it was very well done, as well as the pamphlets that are typically up on the wall. You can't see them because of the touch and pass on of the possible COVID. So it is great pleasure to see that the Visitor Center is as well attended as it is, and that it is a viable option for people to go, and that it is well advertised to get there, to find out about our area within our region and beyond. So it is very much a high interest of mine that we do retain this option, and that you know, for us to try to duplicate this type of facility would be an astronomical fee, I believe. So I am definitely happy that we have the Visitor Center that is promoting the Thousand Islands as well as it is, as well as the town of Gananoque. And thank you very much, Jennifer, for your presentation.
Councillor Fodey, you had a comment?
I do. Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Jennifer. Was there any reversal this year from businesses, Jennifer, that reached out to you as a way to help them better themselves?
There were a few businesses that reached out. I wouldn't say really to better themselves. A lot of businesses reached out, first of all, to see if we were open, and they were happy. There's one bed and breakfast in Gananoque. She reaches out to me all the time. Yeah, I had been in conversation actually with Wings, and I had been in conversation with Wiltsey Creek, Dawn. Just both of them had a lot of protocols in place this year to open, and I definitely a different year for them, but I think it was still a pretty good year for them, just different.
What I meant by bettering themselves is to find ways to attract the people that they weren't seeing on a normal year. I know a lot of businesses are hurting through those customer base numbers just aren't there as in your own presentation. I just thought it would be interesting to know if there's a reversal of the places that you usually point out, if they actually turn that tide and reach back.
Yeah, I think most of the businesses got creative this year. There was a lot of online workshops that I was in that a lot of the same business people in our area were on as well. So I think we just followed that same. So personally reaching out for my assistance to help get people there, I would say no, but we were all on the same Zoom meetings, whatnot. TIO, Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, was putting on weekly workshops or Zoom meetings, sorry. RTO9 did have a few workshops to help people get their businesses open and what they could do to attract visitors. I noticed a great blogger went and visited the Lyndhurst area from Ottawa and actually reached out to her. And I've got one of her articles now on the Travel Thousand Islands page. But I think that was a fantastic idea. And I think certainly more things like that to get those local tourists coming and maybe collaborate with some other businesses. You know, that one there, I think was they visited the donkey farm. They visited Green Gecko, I believe. I'm just sorry, the donkey farm is the one that's stuck in my head because she took the most amazing pictures with the donkeys. And of course they had a baby this year, so they're just so sweet. Yeah. So perfect. I guess no, sorry if I.
Well, I think the message though, if to paraphrase what Councillor Fodey was saying, is that this is where businesses are looking for ways to change how they've done business in the past. And it's just interesting to see which businesses have adapted well, some who have thrived and some who have struggled, because often just because of the regulation that has been put on them. I know, just thinking of the boat tours, for example, and limited numbers and profitability and that sort of thing. So it makes it very difficult to make that work, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we get to a better spot this year and we don't miss another season. Councillor Gorrell, you have something to ask or add? Can't hear you. Need you to unmute. There we go.
Hi, Jennifer. I just, you'd mentioned that bicycling was quite popular. Do you get feedback from people saying what they like, didn't like, need, don't need? Do you ever get that kind of feedback? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gorrell. Yes, we get that all the time. We get recommendations and comments and complaints. Our biggest complaint this year was those washrooms at the new carpool parking lot. And unfortunately, I guess they just didn't get them open in time because of somebody to clean them, staffing, things like that. But we did get a lot of complaints because people thought for some reason they were owned by either the town or the township. So, and once we narrowed it down and found out they were MTO's responsibility, we reached out to MTO and was saddened, I guess, to find out they weren't even going to open this year at all. So next year will be great when they are open. I think that's important. Rest areas are huge. People do like the trail, the Thousand Elms Parkway. A few people wished it was more like in the bush. They wanted it more of a nature, but I don't see how you will see the Thousand Islands if you're in the bush. We don't have an island you can go bike on at the moment, unless you have a boat. You can boat over somewhere. But for the most part, a lot of people come back and just can't believe how beautiful the area is we live in. We have so much outdoor space that I think often we don't realize that we have, that we take it for granted. Our houses aren't all on top of each other. I live in the country, so it's beautiful. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments in regards to Jennifer's presentation? Councillor Mabee, and then I guess we'll wrap this up.
Just to follow up on the bike bathroom, since it is MTO that actually looks after that as a province of Ontario facility. And when we did try to open it up, everything leaked. So we had to have it all repaired. So that's one of the reasons why it didn't get open, because there were still too many issues with the actual premise. So we have repaired most of that item, and it will be open next year, given the pandemic, because again, that's the only thing. If we stay under a state of emergency, then it will be closed because you can't maintain the cleanliness of it, right? So that's one of the other issues that happened this year. Okay, that's my 2 cents.
Any further questions or comments in regards to the presentation? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much, Jennifer, for your contribution to this evening's meeting and your presentation, and it was very excellent. Sorry, Councillor Jamison, did you have something to add? No? Oh, I thought I saw your hand wave. You know, we definitely look forward to renegotiating our agreement with Visitor Center. I know that Kim has that on the docket and is looking at ways to work together in the future. That will probably be coming to council here shortly. So thanks again, Jennifer. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, so I just have to get back to my agenda. So we will move on to staff reports, and I need a mover and a seconder for the motion that reads that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 21-001, being a bylaw to establish general rates and fees for various services provided by the municipality. Can I have a mover, please?
I so move.
Okay, Councillor Ohlke, and I need a seconder. Hand up, and then Councillor Mabee. Okay, so the motion is on the floor and it's up for discussion. I know there's quite a few fees and on this bylaw, so there's a lot to get through. Are there any fees that are out of line in anybody's mindset, or anything that's perking people's ears up as far as questions? Go ahead, Councillor Ohlke.
I noticed a sudden surcharge of $500 for building fees, Your Worship. I'm a little concerned about that one, but on the other hand, I could see what it would be there, but it just was a sudden jolt, shall we say.
Okay. Madam Planner, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, through your worship. Just for clarification, that isn't a fee, it's a deposit. So that $500 comes off of the cost of a building permit when they follow through with it. So what that is to cover is, let's say it's only for a certain value of construction, over $30,000. So if somebody comes in with a building permit for a new house, for example, and the building officials review all of the plans, we do the zoning review, we've circulated it to the Conservation Authority, we've circulated it to the health unit for comment, and then they say, oh, thanks for your comments, I'm not going to follow through with that. The $500 is to help cover the staff administration and review time that's gone into it at that point. If the building permit is issued, that $500 comes off of the total fee of the building permit. So it's not a new fee. It's just because we do have a $140 fee that's the existing fee for the review of a building permit. That fee will remain in place for the lower value construction projects. But we thought for the for the more expensive construction projects, the $500 is a better deposit fee amount to help cover our time in the event that somebody does withdraw their permit, because we have had a few situations of that happening where staff has invested significant time and effort in terms of reviewing an application and drawings and are recouping absolutely no costs for the time and effort that have gone into it.
Thank you for the clarification. Is that okay, Councillor Ohlke? We're good?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. It's very prudent, and I like that idea. Get the money up front. Cheers.
Perfect. Any other fees or concerns with the bylaw as it's been presented? Seeing none, I will call the, oh, Councillor Mabee, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I believe last year when we had this same chart come in front of us, we did have some highlighted yellow areas of changes that were actually proposed. So it would have given maybe a little better indication of how much has changed or what items may have had that happen. But generally speaking, I don't believe many of them have changed a great deal. So just an observation that last year we did have that happen. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, is that something we usually do? Just as a note, it's actually probably a good idea, rather than having comparative to last year's fees versus this year's fees, just to identify which ones were changed just in future.
That's noted, yes. I mean, we've done both practices in past with larger bylaws and larger, like a procedural bylaw, for instance. We've done it in that instance because there's so many changes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's noted for future. I'm not sure. I think the Director of Finance, we ran it by the SMT a number of times. And I think the intention, Kate can speak to this, but was to not confuse people, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
In future, we can make sure that it's highlighted though.
Okay. Director Tyndall, did you want to speak to anything, any major changes in any of these fees that you want to highlight just for our sake in case we've missed it?
Through your worship, the report tried to really outline what the changes were, and for the most part, it was like trying to round certain fees up or make them kind of easier to deal with transactions at the front counter and so on. And then there's some fees I know in our area, for example, in finance admin, that were no longer applicable. Like I think one was for maps, which we no longer sell maps at the front counter, or the maps I think are quite out of date now. So we just tried to do some of that cleanup. And so, yes, certainly we can try to present it differently next year if that's preferred, to show which ones have specifically changed. The report tried to kind of highlight an overview of what's changed, but I don't think there's any real significant ones. What we did try to explain most of the changes through the report.
Right. And if you look at the report, it is fairly clear that there's no real major changes other than, so the only reason that the highlighting might be helpful is that it draws your eye to it in the actual fee, the fee table, but duly noted, and thank you for that addition of information. Any further questions or comments in regards to this report?
Madam Mayor, did you want to ask the public or?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
Good point. Hang on 2 seconds. We have a couple of participants on this evening. Lucky them. Are there any questions in regards to any of these fees? Please raise your hand. We don't have any hands raised, so we're not going to go there. We'll move forward with the motion that's on the floor. All those in favor of the motion at hand, please signify. All those opposed. So Councillor Mabee has a bit of a delay, so I have to wait. So Councillor Mabee is in favor of the motion. All those, and we're carried. So thank you very much, everyone. Okay. So next on the agenda is Finance Report SR 00221 2021 Water and Wastewater Budget. And the motion is that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the 2021 budget for water in the amount of 321,000 and wastewater in the amount of 301,900. That Committee of the Whole recommends Council approve the transfer of half of the water/wastewater reserve fund, half being $375,192 to separate the water and wastewater reserve fund into two separate funds. I need a mover and a seconder. Who would like to move? Councillor Fodey. And seconder is Councillor Mabee. Okay. So the motion is now on the floor. Any comments or questions or queries? Councillor Mabee?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I had a couple questions here. Because we're separating wastewater from potable water, basically, are they equal assets, number one? Second question, if more funds are required in one fund in a given year for some catastrophic issue that needs to be fixed, will you be able to borrow from that other fund, or will we have to go a different way? And I believe the water pricing has not been completed also. So those are the questions that I have. Thank you.
Director Tyndall, do you want to speak to this, or is this something that Director Holliday should be speaking to in regards to the water wastewater?
No, through your worship, I can answer it, and then if he wishes to add to it, that's fine.
Sure.
So in terms of the assets being equal, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I would imagine that they're not equal in value if we looked at the total water assets versus the total wastewater, and that's partly why we would want to take the money from the reserve funds and separate them into two separate. So it's almost like we're trying to run two separate lines of business. So we want the water rates to recover the operating and capital costs for water. We want the wastewater rates to recover the capital and operating costs for wastewater, so that they're not funding each other. Now, if we came into a situation where we needed to use more money than that was available in one fund, we could come to council and ask for permission to borrow, as Councillor Mabee mentioned, from the other fund, if we needed to do that. But in terms of financial planning and setting the rates and so on, it just makes it a bit cleaner if we start to account for the water versus wastewater separately, to try to make sure that it's more clear and transparent in terms of what money we're raising and where the money's going. I'm not sure if I answered all the questions. Sorry, I wasn't clear on your last question, Councillor. Maybe you could repeat what you meant.
I think his last question was about.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Mabee.
Sorry, it's just the water pricing not complete, as in, how we're tiering that. And I think it does come up a little later, I believe. I don't really know this minute, but I know that there was talk about which scenario we were going to use and how that plays out into breaking it down into 50-50 almost with the wastewater and potable water. And so just trying to get at least one of them's clearer than the other, that's for sure. Thank you.
We approved on December 14th the annual rate increase of 3.5. And that's actually in the report as well. So because that was when we discussed reducing the overall recommendation from 5, I believe, and there was a number of increases, incremental increases. Go ahead, Councillor Gorrell.
It just came up in that conversation that it's unclear to me when we set rates. Is there a separate wastewater rate, or is it just based upon what we were considering the water usage, the base amount, and then the additional usage? Is wastewater separate? And I don't think that we monitor that per se. So how would you split? How would you split the earnings, the revenues, into two separate? What would be the function of separating into two separate reserve funds? Is it 50-50? Thanks.
Treasurer, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, through your worship. So we do actually have separate rates for water, wastewater. So we have a flat monthly fee for each and then a variable rate for each based on the excess consumption over 15 cubic meters a month. And the wastewater is billed basically on the water that comes through the meter. So the water usage and the wastewater usage are both based on the water meter readings, but there are separate rates for each.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Councillor Gorrell, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, it does. So we use the same unit measure and we just apply a different rate to each. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Where this becomes important, just as a refresher, and I've talked about this a bit at council in the last 2 years because it's something that's important in a neighboring municipality in Westport. They have a lot of illegal connections, they call them. So people putting their sump pump through the wastewater system, people putting downspouts, a whole bunch of different things they're putting through our wastewater system without it being charged for excessive use or maybe draining a hot tub or whatever. And the challenge with that is that it's you don't really think about it, but if everybody put their rain barrels or their downspouts or their sump pumps through the system, it actually wears out the system faster. And we're processing that much more wastewater than we really should be. So it isn't exactly what goes in is exactly what comes out. So there is no mechanism currently in the provincial legislation that allows us to enter people's homes to check on these illegal connections. There's a number of different policies and regulations that they're looking for, but that's one of the reasons why we would be interested in to know how much wastewater is coming out versus how much water is going in, type thing. So, Councillor Mabee, you had something?
Thank you, Worship, through you. 20 to 30 years ago, part of the building code actually allowed you to put that type sort of gray water, let's say, into the septic system. So that's why there's a catch up with trying to get rid of some of that because there's some grandfathered issues there. So that's part of the reason why there's some difficulty. And fortunately for Lansdowne, we may not have as much of that because it's a newer system.
Correct. So any further questions or concerns in regards to the motion that's on the floor? Councillor Gorrell?
Picking up from our discussion with Watson and the rate setting and how council went for the 3.5% increase and with the understanding that that would cover about 50% of the replacement costs. Am I right in suggesting that council, this municipality, has opted for a philosophy that says that the broader tax base shall pay for any failures, catastrophic style failures or failures that were beyond the scope of our reserve funds for either wastewater or for water? So our philosophy is that the taxpayer base in general will be taking care of that. Would I be right in assuming that? Thank you.
Madam Treasurer, I'll take a stab at this for 2 seconds and then I'll send it over to you. But I believe that the answer would be vehemently no, that is not the philosophy, because under the Provincial Drinking Water Act, it is expected that the user pay if for some reason there was a catastrophic event and there was money to be put into the system to repair, replace, upgrade, what have you, it would have to be done and be borne by the taxpayers that use the system only. And we would have to borrow There might be assistance from the provincial or federal governments, depending on if it was a natural disaster or something to that effect. But no, by no means would the greater tax base have to support it or prop it up. Go ahead, Councillor Gorrell.
Thank you for that clarification, Mayor. It really then would come down to if there is a needy situation. I don't know what it would be, some expensive, needy position. So ultimately, you either borrow the money or you put an assessment on each household using the system, just as you would sort of in a condominium roofing situation or something of that nature. Is that the way we're going with this at council? I just want to be perfectly clear. And I'm getting back to a history and a historical concept here. These water systems were put in by a very zealous, at the time, provincial government. And the ultimate unintended consequence, if you will, is the magic word called unaffordable for small communities like Lyndhurst. And I'm sure there are numerous others. And I think that this township, in that we go about setting these rates and we're going about asset management plans, I think we have to knock on the provincial door and say, hey, you constructed this thing for us generously through need, but they didn't think it through how a community of 300 people, even with its outstanding scalability all the way up to 315 households, how in Lord's name were they going to afford this? And so the provincial government clearly has a role in this. And I would like to see this council, I don't know how we do it, write them a letter, complain. I don't know. How in Lord's name do 300 people pay for a $20 million estimated asset? It's beyond my thinking. And we can kick it down the road as long as we want. Yes, there's going to be, now I hear there would be an assessment per household. You know, where is the provincial government in this, for Pete's sake? Thank you very much.
Madam Treasurer, did you want to speak to anything more specific than what I brought up?
Through your worship, no, I think you pretty much covered it. I mean, the way the legislation's written, it's intended that the rates recover the money necessary to fund the operating and capital operations. And yes, to Councillor Gorrell's point, it's going to be very challenging to do that with the limited number of users that we have on the system. So it's going to be a challenge going forward.
So Councillor Jamison, then Councillor Ohlke.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, of course. I read the short history of water systems that Councillor Gorrell kindly provided to me, and I share his strong concern for what will ultimately be a very difficult long term for our systems. So we understand legally the users of the system are responsible for it. But to Councillor Gorrell's point about the continuous increase in costs, that ultimately it's going to get beyond our folks to be able to afford it. That's not to take away from the fact that it's difficult. It's going to be very difficult soon in the smaller villages to deal with what are clearly challenges with particularly waste. The septic systems up my way, or some of them are in grave disrepair. But the point here is that we have a policy issue around that our people have to pay for the system, but we also have a process reality, legal reality, and we have a policy challenge. And I think that's where Councillor Gorrell's point is well taken, that we should take some initiative to open discussion with the provincial government, along with others that are clearly facing this challenge, to see what remedy there might be for these systems in the midterm and not the long term, because in the meantime, we're not being as aggressive as we probably should be in ensuring there's sufficient reserve, but that's really a hardship. So I hope that we can pick up on Councillor Gorrell's suggestion that we engage the province formally on some form of communication with this challenge. Thank you.
Councillor Ohlke, and then I'll go to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, just a note, and I'm surprised that Councillor Jamison didn't mention it because he did this morning on his Facebook page. The Globe and Mail had a very strongly worded article making just these claims today. It's the first time I've seen one like that, where they were actually really demanding that the province provide more revenues to the lesser or the lower tier municipalities for these various capital projects, because the requirements, the regulations that have come in have really put the systems beyond the pocketbooks of the people living there. And this is, if the Globe and Mail is thundering at the government about it, someone there is going to notice. Okay, thank you.
Okay, CAO, you wanted to add something?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Just the thought struck me that perhaps we can also do some outreach to AMO to see if they have a position or if they have a working group that's already on this. This strikes me as being one of those big issues that we should involve them. So I will undertake that.
And it would also behoove us to possibly bring a motion forward at future council meetings that would be supported by other neighboring municipalities. I know the Village of Westport has just gone through a major retooling on their wastewater plant. I know Town of Prescott has done the same. Town of Prescott is a bit more obviously larger than what we're facing with the Village of Lansdowne, but I believe that Village of Westport is 600, so they're double our size and they're still struggling. I know it was a big ask, and I know part of the, if we go back to the rate study, Merrickville Wolford had some of the highest fees in the area as well. So points are well taken, councillors, in regards to the unsustainability of the long term with just the number of people that we have on it. Now, my hope is that when we get into our strategic planning exercises here, is that part of our discussion will lead to accelerating, encouraging the private development that's already there, that's knocking on our door, trying to get things put together, that will actually move forward, but also the piece of property that we own that has the ability to be developed, that we could add users to the system. And that's part and parcel, I think, of our strategic planning exercise about what we want to see and how we want to go about that. So, but that's a discussion for another day and not part of this particular motion that's on the floor. So the motion that's on the floor is in regards to approving the 2021 budget for water and wastewater. Is there any further comments or questions in regards to the report in front of us? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. And,
Councillor Mabee, are you frozen?
I think he might be frozen.
Frozen, okay.
I waited as long as I could to see if his hand popped up. So,
excuse me, Your Worship, I didn't see if Councillor Jamison voted.
Yes, Councillor Jamison did with both hands. I saw him.
Yeah.
Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Councillor Mabee. Okay,
it is
so
a yes.
So now we are moving on to staff report SR 003-21 Community and Business Services Report establishing a joint recreation working group. And the motion that's coming to the floor is that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve following representation for the Joint Recreation Working Group: Kim Goodman, who's the Director of Community and Business Services, as staff representative, Councillor Fodey, and myself, Mayor Smith-Gadke. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Ohlke and Councillor Mabee. Thank you very much. Any discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify.
Corey, did you want to check with the public after each report? Did you want to check at the end? That's okay. They don't have their hands up, and if it comes up, I'll let you know, but I wasn't sure whether you wanted to.
Maybe
chisel it
that's what
onto
we'll
that.
do. We'll just indicate to the attendees, if you ever have a question, if you could please put your hand up, and it will identify, it will show up in the clerk's feed, I think.
Yep.
I don't always have the chat open, so if you could have your chat open, that way we know that if you'd like to speak to anything, you can put your hand up, and that I will ask if the hand is up. Okay. So that was an affirmative. That motion was carried. So thank you very much, gentlemen. The next on the docket is SR 00521 Finance Report Addendum to FN-029-2021 Municipal Budget. And the motion is that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the revised 2021 municipal operating budget of $13,789,620 with a tax levy of $10,437,440 and a tax rate of 0.00447530. So discussion on this motion. Councillor Ohlke.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, an annoying question. The difference between the tax levy and the operating budget is $3,352,180 and a few cents. Where does that money come from?
Madam Treasurer, would you like to speak to that?
Corey, sorry, before that, who moved and seconded the motion?
Oh.
We need that before it gets on the table, sorry.
Oh, because I didn't ask. I apologize. Thank you. Who's the mover? Who's the seconder that would like to? Councillor Ohlke and then Councillor Gorrell. I'm going to hang you up there. Perfect. So now it's on the floor. My apologies, everyone. So now we can discuss it. So the question that's on the floor is the difference between the levy and the actual amount of the budget. Madam Treasurer?
Through Your Worship. So the total amount of almost 14 million is the gross budget, the total revenue, total expenses. And then the levy requirement is the portion that we need to fund through the levy. So there's also funding we get through Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund and some other grants. There's user fees and other like the general rates and fees that we just approved. That bylaw generates some revenue. So that's those other types of revenue bring in revenue as well. So the levy requirement is less than that total 13.8 million.
So that would also include the 1.5 million we would usually get from the casino. That revenue would come in through the operating budget and then be allocated to the capital reserves, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's where we're missing. We should actually have more there this year than we do, but let's hope for nothing short of a miracle for us to get back to somewhat normalcy by mid-year. Further discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Jamison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, perhaps the Treasurer, to note that we're moving $10,000 from reserve in order to ensure that this gets us to where we'd like to with our tax rate. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay, so having thought about this,
and I don't want this misinterpreted, but we have in our original motion for this budget an amount of library budget to 450,000, and the operative words there are up to 450,000. It's been pretty clear, certainly since the first budget was presented, or the budget was presented. I, for one, have had the opportunity to review the library budget on a line by line, and I'm quite confident that there is at least 10,000 there that is more than they will need for sure, probably considerably more. And I think at this point, I would recommend that we change that original motion from up to 450 to up to 440. In other words, whatever that amount is, let's leave it in the reserve rather than reserving it for use by the library. One way or the other, the library will operate. It's on COVID shutdown mode, and everything will be fine there. But the up to allows us to do the other things that we are planning to do, which is rethink a lot of aspects of the operation as well as the reserves and so on. So I would like to recommend that we make that move rather than go to our reserves, where we'd really like to build up for long term and any challenges we face. Thank you.
So in light of this particular motion, the way it's written, perhaps I would suggest that the amendment should be to this motion, that we use that, and that amend this motion, that we recommend staff to find the $10,000 reduction through the library budget versus reducing the transfer to reserve funds. Just because then it's a direction from our council versus a recommendation from the staff. Because I think we're already reducing the amounts of transfers to reserve funds this year as it is. A further $10,000 reduction to get our tax rate, the revised tax rate down, for increase down. I'd rather see us find the efficiency in the library budget as well, but I think it needs to be worded that we direct staff to apply the $10,000 reduction to efficiency in the library budget rather than the reduction to reserves, transfer to reserve funds. Is that amenable to you, Councillor Jamison?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that amendment to the motion? Councillor Fodey? Okay. So, Madam Clerk, did you get that written down the way I said it, or do we?
I got half of it written down. If you can repeat it, please.
So that council directs staff to find the further $10,000 efficiency in the library budget rather than reducing the transfer to reserve funds. Have you got that all down there, Madam Clerk?
I have that.
Perfect. Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor that's made by Councillor Jamison and seconded by Councillor Fodey. Any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Ohlke.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I'm wondering about when the rest of the library board hears about this, and the sense of things being moved by fiat without their knowledge. That is a little disturbing, mostly because I'm the one who's going to have to get it in the ear over it. But
so today
in principle, I don't have a problem with this, but I'm just wondering if it's being done in isolation.
I'll let Councillor Jamison speak, and then I'll add my 2 cents.
Well, I too am a member of the library board, and I know that there has been discussion about what the actual amount that was submitted to the council was versus what I, for one, thought was actually going to be submitted to the council. And in fact, at that time, there was something closer to $20,000 difference. Now, we're in a point of transition where we're not capping that, nor are we reducing it, because the operative words are up to $440,000 versus to, or a budget of. So there is other work to be done to scale the library service to a level that we can afford, and as well as in a motion I've offered to council for later discussion that we should be opening options for other practical thoughts. As far as it goes, if we can wait a week, we can wait a month. But the reality is we would like to pass this budget, and I think moving money out of the reserves when every other department in the municipality has really clawed back whereas the library presented a budget based on what has turned out to be, in my view, more than they needed to ask for, whereas everybody else trimmed their sails rather dramatically. So I agree with your sentiment, Councillor Ohlke, but I think it's time to start moving on these things fairly assertively.
So I'll just remind everyone that the amendment is to direct staff to help find further efficiency in the library budget. It's not to reduce the library budget by 10,000. It's to work with them. The other thing I would also remind council this evening is that this is committee of the whole. So we're not finalizing this decision until next week. So there will be an opportunity for the library board to hear about this before the final decision is made at council next week. But just going back to Councillor Jamison's point is that there's some sharpening of some pencils that need to happen. And I know that there's a lot of change happening over at the library right at the moment, and it might be doable, it may not be, but we have a week to come back and have that discussion further at council if need be. Councillor Gorrell, you had your hand up.
Thank you, and through you, your worship. I realized that we are talking an amendment, and before I would vote on that, I find myself having to go back to the rationale of the original proposal here. So we received $72,000 from a government source that we are able to bang right into our revenues, which reduces our tax levy. Where did this other $10,000 come from? Is that just something, what's the rationale behind reducing a reduction and therefore an operating expense? I do not understand the $10,000 portion. Is it just to get the tax increase down to some number? Well, $10,000, excuse me, that is not good. That is not good enough. If we had $72,000, just deduct the $72,000 and carry on. $10,000, that is, I would vote against that, and I will vote against that, let alone the amendment, which I don't clearly understand why we're involving the library in an amendment to this. It is beyond my comprehension. So I would have to vote no in both cases, I believe. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mabee, you had your hand up. I apologize.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Mine isn't so much about the amendment, but to the very last statement on this municipal budget draft here, that the county in education, we don't know their portion or what their request, if they have any, and whether that's been rectified or any more information has come our way yet.
That's a good point, and I apologize, Councillor Mabee. I probably should have started the conversation off with the fact that the county budget binder finally made it to me late last week, and I believe I sent out an email to the group, but that the recommendation is that the county budget will increase by 1.5%. Based on the budgets that were originally presented, the overall tax increase based on 1.5% increase at county would put us up to, I believe, Madam Treasurer, 3.2% overall.
Yes, that's correct.
So if the county were to approve the 1.5% increase, which I'm not 100% sure that we will be going to that full amount because there's a lot of questions that I have about this budget. So anyways, right now it's proposed at 1.5 with our proposed tax increase, which is on the floor right now with the amendment, including, because what we're amending is really the recommendation that was made by staff that we use the 72,000 safe restart funding to offset our tax increase for 2021. But the further $10,000 reduction to transfers, rather than reduction to transfers that we find the efficiency with the library budget, that is to keep our tax increase under 6%. That's really where we were looking at the numbers. And I can appreciate Councillor Gorrell's comments in regards to that. But if we're trying to keep the budget increase down as much as we possibly can, I realize that $10,000 doesn't look like a whole lot, but it can be, and that's the difference. So Councillor Gorrell, you wanted to add?
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Procedurally, I would like to, and I don't know how to, it's sort of an amendment to an amendment. So I would like to amend that we get rid of the 10,000, what's it say, reduction to the reserves. Get rid of that. That's I'd like to propose that, and I will. If we get this vote done, then I'll propose the amendment that we take $10,000 out of that and just use the $72,000 appropriately, and let those other numbers lie where they lie. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have to deal with the amendment that's on the floor, which is to change the direction to staff to reduce rather than reduce transfer to reserve funds to find efficiency in the library budget. Councillor Jamison, you want to speak to that, and then Councillor Mabee, and then I'm going to call the question on the amendment, and then we'll deal with a further amendment if need be.
Just trying to understand Councillor Gorrell's. I understand his point of view, but I'm just trying to figure out one thing here. These figures that we're looking at with respect to the potential increase, these are taking into account the 1.5 from the county?
I don't actually, the overall tax increase that was here, no, it wasn't included in that because the county budget had not made it to us prior to publication of the report. So what you see there, the overall tax increase on page 40 of the package of tonight's package. Madam Treasurer, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2021 revised, the middle column that showed the gross operating budget, the tax levy requirement, the property tax rate, the proposed tax increase on our portion of the taxes is 5.9, and then the overall rate increase for 2020 shows 2.6, but that should actually show 3.2 because of the now proposed, that was based on 0% increase at the county. Madam Treasurer, right. Is that correct?
Yeah, through your worship. So the report is based on assuming that the county and education portions remain the same because we didn't have any information. If we assume that the county budget's going to get approved at the 1.5%, which is unknown at this time, but if we go with the 1.5% increase at the county level, then our increase is 3.2% overall.
So Your Worship, that's with the 1.5, it goes up to 3.2. Now, to be a devil's advocate on the thing, is it so material that we can't just leave things the way they are? That at some point it'll become very clear to all of us that with respect to the library, it will not spend $450,000. And we'll know that in the next few weeks as we go through a ground up review. In the case of taking things out of our reserve, it's $10,000. I'd rather see stay in the reserve. And the only reason I really go after the library budget is frankly because it appears to be the only area where there wasn't a real shaving to get to the budget we got to. And I think of some of the fire services shavings and so on, which, you know, I'm sure will be fine, but one worries about these things with respect to our fire service. So is the material different so much that we, one, will lower the library budget anyway, just by virtue of the exercise we'll go through? And two, can we leave the money in the reserve fund and just simply take the slightly higher increase overall, accounting for the 1.5% from the county? We should make that assumption as we move forward. That's my question, Your Worship.
So I'll let Councillor Gorrell back in just because Councillor Jamison's comment was directed to him, and then we'll go to Councillor Mabee. And then I'm going to call the question on the amendment.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, I recommend that we cancel this amendment and the person putting it on the table step up to the plate and just rescind the amendment, and we get right back to the initial. It has become a bit circular in its argument, and it as accomplishing, I don't see a darn thing. Thank you.
Councillor Mabee, I'll go to you, and then I'll go back to Councillor Jamison, and then I am calling the question.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Still, we don't have any indication from the Education Board whether they're changing their percentage or whether they're going to go up, as well as we still don't have confirmation on the county. So for me, this is like writing a blank check, and I really can't do that. I like to see that we've got this finalized one way or the other before we actually make a decision on what we're doing for our citizens in our municipality. So I'd like to see concrete evidence of the county and the education before I vote on this. Thank you.
So I'll just put a caveat on that. The county budget may not be approved until March or April. Keep in mind that if we don't approve our own budget, that we won't be able to get our tenders out in order to get them approved, because part of this is operating and capital. So just as an aside. Councillor Jamison, you can bookend this, and then I'm going to call the question on the amendment.
Okay, I appreciate Councillor Gorrell's love and support on this amendment. If the amendment is defeated, my understanding is it's back to the original plan that we will look at next week, as opposed to what has been proposed. The amendment doesn't change the fact that money will come out of reserve on the motion that's on the table. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that by defeating the amendment, we're just simply going into one pot rather than adjusting another on the original motion. Whereas we're back to the whole discussion about $10,000. Is it worth it to begin with, to get that down to a point where we give the impression we're doing everybody a great favor by reducing something by 0.6. Is that really what we're trying to do here? Or are we trying to manage the thing forward with every department lining up to do their thing? So I think we should probably go through with the motion, even if I go crashing down in flames. I accept that and we move on.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question on the amendment, which is to direct staff to find further efficiency in the library budget of $10,000 rather than reduce the transfer to reserve fund payments. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, are you saying, and this is the way that I've worded the actual amendment, that you want to add this paragraph to the existing recommendation so that when this is approved, if it's approved, there will be two paragraphs, the original and then this one? Okay,
correct.
I just wanted to be clear.
Thank you. Okay. So all in favor of the amendment as proposed, please signify. I've got 3, and then I've got all those opposed to the amendment, and I've got, I can't tell if Councillor Mabee's not moving, so I need to know whether he's moving or not, if he's a yay or a nay. Councillor Mabee, there we go, he's unmuting.
I'm a yay.
So you're in favor of the amendment. Okay.
The amendment.
So the amendment carries.
Yeah.
And so the amendment is added as a paragraph to the original motion. Okay?
Yes. Did you want to read it all in its entirety now? It's up to you.
Yes. So I'll read the first part, which I have in front of me, and then you read the second part, which you have in front of you. So the motion would read that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the revised 2021 municipal operating budget of $13,789,620 with a tax levy of $10,437,440 and a tax rate of 0.00447530. And then the second part of the motion is?
And that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council direct staff to find the $10,000 efficiency within the library budget rather than reducing the transfer to reserves.
That's the amended motion in its entirety. So is there further discussion on the motion as amended? I'm going to wait to see if Councillor Mabee pipes up because I can't see his hand. You're good?
No.
Okay. And then I've got Councillor Gorrell.
No other discussion.
We just voted it. It was just passed, was it not? That amendment was just passed.
The amendment,
The
yes.
amendment was passed, but not the
Okay.
full motion, because now we're on the amended
All right.
motion.
And
Go
so
ahead.
through you, Mayor, looking at the now amended motion, I would like to amend that says that we send this back to staff and we eliminate the further $10,000 reduction to transfer to reserves. We eliminate that. And if so, do we have to send that back to staff to come up with the new numbers? Or are we able in this amendment to simply say something to the extent of, with whatever new numbers pop out here, when you eliminate that $10,000 reduction to reserves?
So
Here's mud.
your amendment would be to the amended motion, and your amendment would be to
eliminate the $10,000
reduction.
Absolutely. But
So
that means that all those numbers would change. And my question therefore is, can we go ahead and do that even though those numbers will change a little bit? Is that okay? I'd like to say that in an amendment. I'd like to say, just get rid of the $10,000 reduction in reserves and see where the numbers fall.
Okay, so
thank you.
Before we discuss that, I need Councillor Gorrell as the mover, and I need a seconder to strike the further $10,000 reduction from the report. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
So they've already approved that amendment be added. You didn't vote on it in its entirety yet. So the only thing that's up for debate right now is basically the top part until you vote. So you have to either vote it down, and then we can put Councillor Gorrell's amendment on for that. But if it's basically, if you vote for this whole motion in its entirety right now, then Councillor Gorrell would need to put forward a motion to reconsider, which is different because then it will be carried. So, because that is contrary to the $10,000 recommendation, right? Like it's basically reversing it. So just be mindful of that. You technically need to vote on it first.
And this is why we have a clerk.
And then the disposition of that, we can go from there as to what we do next. But that's procedure.
So Councillor Gorrell.
Through you, Your Worship, what is on the table is including the amendment. That's fine. We still have an opportunity to look back at the entirety, and it's sort of regardless of the amendment. We are looking at the first part, and my amendment would read, I would like to amend the first part that says we get rid of the further reduction to the reserves of $10,000.
So the way that he could actually do it, Madam Clerk, is he could say that the municipal budget to amend the amount of $13,789,620 to be $13,799,620. But I guess then it's a double negative. It doesn't work that way. Oh man. Putting me through my paces on Robert's Rules of Order here.
A lot of minutes here for $10,000.
It is a lot of work.
There's a motion on the table right now.
So there's a motion on the table that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the revised 2021 municipal operating budget with direction to staff to find further efficiency in the library budget for $10,000 rather than transfer from reserve funds. Transfer to reserve, reducing the transfer to reserves. So do we want to table this instead until we find a better way to do this? Or are we just going to go in circles for the next 15, 20 minutes? Because the problem, not the problem I have with it, I understand what Councillor Gorrell is trying to do, but I realize that we can't make a double negative, if you will. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we would be coming back, this would be coming back to council next week for ratification, correct?
Yes, council meeting.
Okay. So Councillor Gorrell's motion to amend can't be done. It's a motion for reconsideration. Sorry, I can't hear you, Councillor Gorrell. You've got your mute on.
No, I appreciate that. And a motion of reconsideration could be done up to a year in this township. So no problem. We'll reconsider.
Okay, so the motion that's on the floor, we'll leave it be for now, and then we'll have further discussion next week. And we can discuss in between, then we can talk to you and the clerk if there's another way that we can handle it. Okay, is that satisfactory, Councillor Gorrell? I didn't have a seconder on your
No, that's fine.
too.
I appreciate that. Yes, that's absolutely acceptable. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion still stands. The amended motion still stands on the floor. Any further comments or questions before I call the question? All those in favor of the motion as amended, please signify. And I can't see Councillor Mabee's hand, yay or nay. Councillor Mabee, are you still?
Sorry, I'm just, yeah, I unmuted myself now. I can see myself moving, but obviously my connection is not great here. Hence why this is the first time I've done this from home. So we're talking about the amendment right now, or
No, the amended motion. So the amended motion reads that Committee of the Whole recommends Council approve the revised 2021 municipal operating budget of 13 million, blah, 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 with tax levy of 10 million, blah, blah, blah. I shouldn't say blah, blah, blah. This is all very technical. But that we've
I'm actually a nay because I don't have.
Because you don't have
Sorry,
what?
Did you? I'm actually don't have the education and the county numbers yet, so I'm a nay.
So I had a yay. I'll count the yays again. So how many yays? We've got 3, and then I've got how many nays? I've got 3 nays. So we're in a tie at this point because we're missing Deputy Mayor Lackey. So it's defeated?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is defeated. So we will have to come back to council with something different. I'm sure that we will figure that out. Madam Clerk, we'll work with the treasurer on that one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Councillor Jamison, you had something to add? You're still muted there, Councillor Jamison. There we go.
So I apologize, Your Worship. I'm such a technical genius. Is this going to be doable for us to pass next week? And I appreciate what Councillor Mabee is saying about unknown numbers. But the reality is we need to move on certain things. So we've defeated this. Now, what happens next week? And it's a procedural question, Your Worship. Can we come back next week and pass the budget if we haven't more or less endorsed it this evening? Because we've fallen over, quite frankly, and I'm part of the fault, rather a small pile, if you will. So can we look at this tonight as being something we can move to next week and then get on with the business of passing it so staff can function as they should be at this point in the year? Thank you.
Madam Clerk and Madam Treasurer, do you want to speak to that before I take any more comments from the floor?
Procedurally, given the direction and the discussion, usually and in past, I would and the CAO would work with the treasurer to come up with another recommendation for the council meeting. But it would still be slated to be passed and ultimately ratified at that meeting unless you table it. because the motion that was just put on the table was defeated. So.
Okay. Councillor Ohlke, you wanted to speak to that, and then I'll recognize Councillor Fodey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I can't help doing this, but I tend to think about households. And the $72,000 divided between about our 3,200 households would be $22.50 per household. If you look at the $10,000 reduction divided by 3,200 households, it comes to about $3.12 per household. That's just in reference to Councillor Jamison talking about us tripping over small piles. So that is a consideration, I think, per household when we're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fodey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our head of the finance department, can we not amend our own budget at any given time throughout the whole year?
Madam Treasurer.
Through your worship, yes, we can amend the budget, but once the tax rate is set, then once council approves that tax rate, there's really no going back to change the tax rate. So the problem would be once we approve basically the envelope of money, then council at any time could change how it's allocated or what you would like to do with the budget. But that envelope of money that we've based the tax rate calculation on is already pretty much set there, if that makes sense.
That does. Thank you for a little clarification there. My fear is much along the alignment of Councillor Jamison. We have a council to run here. We have a business to run here. If we don't get this passed, we could put in jeopardy a lot of things that are in the works, or at least planning to be in the works. I'm fully aware of, moving funds from here or there to get the job done. I'm full agreement, as a number of us were, that we weren't really satisfied, I'll be polite, with the library budget. So I'm sure there's monies to be had there. But I'm more fearful of the fact that we don't move this forward next Monday night. We're going to have we could literally put ourselves in real jeopardy here. Thank you.
So I'll end the conversation at that point because there's no further motion on the floor in regards to this particular topic because the motion was defeated. But we'll work with I'll work with staff and senior management, the CAO, to bring forward something that might be more palatable at the next meeting that might address the concerns that were discussed here this evening. I'm going to ask that we take a break because we've been at it for an hour and a half. So we'll take a refreshment break and reconvene at 8:10, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, so we're back on at 8:10. So if you could mute everybody's mics, Madam Clerk, just in case. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? I'm going to be bad and say something. When we're at the stage where we're concerned about $10,000, we've come a long way from a few years ago. And that's the good news. Now I'll go away now.
Don't go away, Mark. Don't go away. We don't want you to go away.
Gord, are we having a heated agreement?
Usually. And no matter what you say, I'm going to agree with you, even when I don't.
Well, I resemble that remark.
Sort of, kind of.
I guess we're live.
Are we?
Where is the balcony?
Okay.
Oh, clerk's here. We're going to have to behave ourselves.
Oh dear. We might be sent back to our balcony.
I apologize. Okay, so we're back at 8:10. We have everybody, we do. Okay, so okay, next on the docket is the finance report for write-off for uncollectible tax account balances. And the motion is that the committee of the whole recommends that council write off uncollectible property tax balances totaling $31,341 or $40.28, of which $24,736.98 is a township expense. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Ohlke, Councillor Mabee. Okay, discussion on the motion. Okay, I've got Councillor Fodey, Councillor Ohlke, and Councillor Mabee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, question. What happens to these properties when they unsuccessfully sell?
Director Tyndall, do you want to speak to the properties that they don't, the ones that don't sell, do they go into our name, or what's the next step?
Through you, Your Worship, as part of the tax sale process, and please don't quote me because I'm just going by memory right now, but part of legislation is that there is a point where we can vest the property and take it into the township's name. Generally, we don't typically do that as a township. I can't speak to these properties in particular, but usually if a property doesn't sell through the tax sale process, it's not advantageous for us to take on the property, as there's usually some risk to the property or some reason why it's not selling through the tax sale process. So in the case of the properties that are included in this report, I understand that a couple of them are basically a small, tiny piece of property in the St. Lawrence, which basically some rocks sticking up in the water, and that's why they haven't sold through the tax sale process up to this point. Until MPAC actually does something to eliminate these properties, which up till now they have reduced the value of the properties, but as long as MPAC has them on the roll and there is a valid piece of property there, we have to levy taxes. And then we follow the process we do with every property. So they start to accumulate the penalty and interest, and it basically is some housekeeping here that to write these off, because right now there is no way we have no means to collect this money at this point.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up question. We don't know what size these properties are, or where they're located for that matter, unless we delve into it. But all I'm thinking is if they are sitting in, cyberspace ownership, do they become derelict properties to the neighboring properties near them? That's where I'm coming from here, to the point where if there are no value in a sale, can they be transferred to a vested interest point neighboring to them? Just a thought.
Through your worship, I can look into that more. I'm not sure we're under the legislation. As far as I know, the only option we have would be to vest it into our name. And so if they've gone up for tax sale and the adjoining property owners haven't taken interest, I'm not sure what other avenue we might have.
Okay, thank you.
And then Councillor Ohlke, and then Councillor Mabee.
I think my question, through you, Your Worship, I think my questions have largely been answered. I understand why people would want to pay tax on submerged rocks or rocks that had now become submerged. I was curious about the other properties that had remained sold, what they consisted of. Adjacent to my own property, there's a forest road, or on my own property, the north boundary is a forest road. And there was a small patch of land that was segregated because of that between lots. And I know the property owner to the north of me was levied the taxes on this land and never bothered to pay it because it was useless for agriculture or anything else. So I imagine that's one of the parcels that's there, but it's nothing but rock and bog. You couldn't build on it, you couldn't farm it, and there's no useful timber on it. It's not big enough for a quarry. So that might enlighten people to what sort of things are out there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mabee.
Yes, thank you, Worship, and through you. Much to the same sort of vein is, what is this property? Where is it? What type of property it is? And why is it not able to be sold or no interest in it? So if we have that follow-up come back to us, it'd be great. Thank you.
Any further questions? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Kate.
Sorry, sorry about that. Sorry, through your worship, I'd have to go back to the deputy treasurer, as she's the one that handles the tax sale. So off the top of my head, I'm not familiar exactly what the properties are.
Okay, so any further questions in regards to this report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, and it's carried. Thank you. Next is next is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business on the horizon? Okay, any other business? Go ahead, Councillor Jamison, and then Councillor Mabee.
Sorry, Your Worship, this may not be the appropriate spot, but we were alerted earlier today about poisoned meat being left in the village, in Rockport specifically, and apparently in Lyndhurst, and possibly Sealy's Bay. And I appreciate that the CAO got that message out to us pretty quickly, and I for one, have been pushing it around. So I know it's a small audience, but keep an eye out for, or in meatball form apparently. So keep an eye on your pets and your little children because this is a very bad thing. Thank you. Sorry if that's not the right spot, but there it is.
There it is. Councillor Mabee.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I've got a couple little points of other business. One we've partially dealt with and had a response back from MTO that the flashing light at the top of the rampway for 401 East at number 2, they don't think it's an issue, but I'd like to see what else we can do to push this forward to provincial, because I still hate to see somebody's death over this before we get a light there. So whether it's a notice of motion or whatever we have to do, and I'd like to see something done to try to promote that. And then the second little item of business here is something about our waste sites, and I know there's been lots of talk about trying to get something committee or see what our next steps are. And I really want to see something happen here on this. I know it's a long-term plan we need to get to, and I've said it many times before, so I'm bringing it up again. So yes, I think our clerk had something about that.
Madam Clerk, you had something to, I think, say about the MTO thing, and then I'll recognize Councillor Gorrell after that.
Yep, it's on the council meeting next week for discussion. So any action that council wants to take, they can take at that time when it's raised.
Thank you. And as far as waste sites, I do know that the Director of Operations and I have been having a number of conversations in regards to this because it is looming. There's decisions that are needing to be made, and we need to have some options. And anyways, I believe that we'll be having some further discussions in regards to where we're going with landfills, waste sites. Is that correct, Director Holiday?
That's correct. I had a good discussion with MACP on Friday, got a good sense of where we are right now, what our requirements are, and I'm going to have a further discussion tomorrow with our consultant Melrose and sort of see, where they see us going and make sure that it aligns with MACP as well. And then once I've sort of put all that together and have a plan, then I plan on doing a presentation to council based on that.
Okay, Councillor Gorrell, then I'll let Councillor maybe follow up to that, and then Councillor Gorrell, and then Councillor Jamison.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Director Halliday. Is there any time frame that you're looking at to do that presentation for us?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, I'm thinking I'd like to shoot for February. Once I have a good sense, keeping in mind that I've got to do the road needs assessment presentation as well. I'm thinking February, though, would be an ideal time to have that discussion. Part of the requirement that I'm aware of right now is that we have to acquire more containment attenuation zones, more CAS lands, and we have to increase our testing. So I think those ones I want to get started right away, and then start dealing with some of these other items that have been brought up by the ministry as well at the same time.
Yes, I'm waiting with bated breath to hear anything. Thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Gorrell, then Councillor Jamison, then Councillor Ohlke.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Just a couple of words in support of Councillor Mabee's light at Highway 2 and the 401 ramp. I often use that ramp, and what I find very curious, and an argument that could be used with MTO, and I'm not far from an expert on roads construction, but when you are leaving Gananoque, that would be eastbound on the Highway 2, you will notice that you don't see that exit. You do not see cars coming off and coming onto Highway 2 until you're almost on the bridge over the 401. The problem is cars are by now accelerating at that point, going away from town, and it is a safety issue. And there is no doubt in my mind that the visibility of that, somehow MTO has got to take a hard look at that. Thank you very much. And in support of Brian's thoughts. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jamison.
Your Worship, fully support Councillor Mabee and Councillor Gorrell, but while you're at it, please mention Lyndhurst Road at 15 and the north and south entrances to Sealy's Bay are black. And if the weather is anything, short of really inclement, those are very hard turns to make. And I hear about it all the time for those three particular spots, and I agree with them. So while you're at it, try to get a few lights out of them, will you, Operations Director?
Okay, Councillor Mabee, and then I'll go to Councillor Director Holiday.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you, and back to Councillor Jamison for his privy. Are you talking flashing red lights or actual street lights that were part of our plan of replacing on those intersections?
What I'm referring to, Your Worship, is actual street lights at those entrances. They're completely black at all 3 points. At this stage, if you actually had lighting at those intersections, I'm sure all the other flashing things wouldn't be necessary because it's not that kind of an intersection, but it's just, you can miss it at night if it's raining. It's really something. So that's my request. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ohlke.
Oh,
sorry?
Sorry, might be part of the street lighting plan that we had there going over the last couple of years of replacing lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Director Holiday, do you want to speak to that before I go on to Councillor Ohlke?
Yes, please. So I've had a discussion with the county. The illumination study was completed. There's a report that's going to be coming through, but it was lacking some details in terms of the accident frequency and history, if there has been any. I'm personally not aware of any, so a report was on its way, but we just found that it didn't have the depth that it required. So my intent is to reach out to the detachment, the local detachment, and also have a chat with the fire chief and discuss those locations. Just to basically put it, MTO does not, they don't feel that it's warranted at the locations, but they will allow us to install the streetlights at those locations. I spoke with the county as well, and they basically said the same thing, that they don't feel that it's warranted. They mirror the MTO, but if we feel that it's necessary, then it's up to us to do the work and maintenance of that, to the tune of somewhere around $20,000 to $22,000 per light per location.
Okay, Councillor Ohlke.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I'd like to support the work of the other councillors on street lighting and safety. The other point I want to go to is the Conservation Authority. They're in the process right now of changing appointments for the committees. I've asked to stay on the source water protection and to go to the Rideau Corridor steering group. I was on the group for Frontenac Arch Biosphere, but Frontenac Arch Biosphere dispensed with the Conservation Authority as part of their governing council. Surprise, surprise. Although apparently their junior staff approaches the Conservation Authority through the side door still. Very interesting. I'll have some questions during their presentation on the 20th. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, Councillor Fodey, you had your hand up.
I did. Thank you, Your Worship. I support my fellow councillors on these safety zones. With regards to the off-ramp that Councillor Mabee is referring to at Highway 2, I can relate personally to 2 accidents. But my real question is to the chief. Is there historical data kept on these incidents, Chief? I know the fire department has attended a number of incidents at that location. Are they historically recorded?
Yeah, we would have records on file of incidents at those areas on any intersection. And we did take it to the ministry with the request on the data that we had or data that was available on the Highway 15 Leonard's Road area there. And they did come back and say it was a low incidence area.
I guess that would depend on where you're one of the victims in one of the accidents, or how you perceive that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're all on the same page here. We need to push hard on these, you know, kind of a one-off, shrug your shoulders, it doesn't matter to us attitude that we have at a higher tier, and make sure that our residents are safe and anybody else using these ramps, not just our residents. I mean, some of these accidents, all these locations mentioned, some of them have been pretty serious. No deaths that I'm aware of, but is that what we're waiting for? I hope not.
Okay, so those are all noted by the director and under our discussion under other business. Any other business? Seeing none, we'll move forward with a notice of motion, which is put forward by Councillor Jamison for a library operations review. And I'll read it out and then ask for a seconder. I know that Councillor Jamison has brought it forward. Whereas the council believes in the importance of having a viable library service available to township residents, and whereas the fiscal challenges affecting taxpayers in the pandemic and beyond require all municipalities to reevaluate spending capacity and priorities, and whereas the asset management plan development process is providing and will provide council with a clearer picture of the long-term operational and capital expenditures that will be required to fulfill resident expectations, and whereas council will consider all aspects of township activity through its forthcoming strategic planning exercise, and whereas the above stated challenges and expectations also present an opportunity to engage with other area municipalities to review current and to consider a variety of new joint service initiatives. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends that council direct staff to review the library founding bylaw and then explore options with our area municipalities for library service joint service partnerships, such as union boards or comparable, and report these findings to council as the schedule permits through the strategic planning process. So do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ohlke. Okay, go ahead. Is there anybody who would like to speak to this? Go ahead, Councillor Jamison.
I apologize, Your Worship, a very long-winded motion in keeping with my long-windedness, but this is not in any way to be construed as a negative course with respect to the library. In fact, it's a reverse. I don't think there's anyone that around council table or in the community that doesn't want anything less than a very viable, very effective library system. So the idea here is to get as much information about all of our options so that when we move through our own strategic plan and the library moves through its strategic plan, we have sufficient understanding of what our possibilities are to serve our citizens. So that's it for me. Thanks for indulging this.
Any further comments or questions in regards to this? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion at hand, please signify. All those opposed? None opposed, and that carries unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Jamison, for bringing that forward, and we look forward to having further discussion about this topic later on in the year as time permits and as staff bring forward further options. Okay, so now we've come to the mayor's update. So I will try to be as brief as I can. There's lots of things that happened over the Christmas holidays, and I hope everybody had a lovely holiday and restful as best they can, and we're able to see a small group of people before our rules changed, if you will. But we're able to see their friends and family from a distance, whether be it through Zoom or socially distant walks or waving just as you drive by. So I know that I was due for a rest, and I fully took advantage of that, and I appreciated every minute of it. So just a few things I'd like to point out to the group. The broadband initiative is still moving along. I know our director of planning, along with our CAO, is working with our consultants to move that forward. And some timeframes have changed somewhat, but the good news is I believe we're still, the foot is still on the gas pedal, let's put it that way, and we're still moving forward at breakneck speed, but that things are getting more exciting by the minute. Our new partner for this second study that we're doing is very knowledgeable and very good at what they're doing based on the feedback we're getting from the staff, so that's great. As discussed earlier in the meeting, county budget is coming through with a 1.5% increase. I was talking with our treasurer about joint services. I pushed county to defer speaking about the county budget as a whole, which was supposed to be tomorrow. I only got the budget binder midday Thursday, and to try to disseminate a binder that's this thick, literally, in less than 4 days there's no way I could have done it. So I graciously asked for the indulgence of council that we push this off for a week, and they have done that. However, we are looking at joint services on Wednesday, just the same, which is fine, because it's a much smaller budget. It's a much smaller piece of the budget. So I've got some questions there. And as I said, I went through it with our treasurer as well to get her input and her insight. So I think we'll have some very good questions, but it really comes down to the amount of COVID funding that has come through by both provincial and federal governments, and where that was applied last year and where it's applied this year, and how that might affect the tax rate going forward. So looking forward to having those robust discussions at county. Just to pin a bow on it, I was chosen to be on the Mapleview Lodge Management Committee at county, which I'm very excited about, because Mapleview Lodge will be embarking on a very large expansion. I think it's 132 beds. And so I'll be part of that committee of oversight for the next 2 years, which is kind of interesting, and I'm very excited to be part of that. I'm sitting on the CAO selection committee, as I had mentioned before, and we're moving forward with that. We're hoping to have preliminary selections done by the end of the month, and then start interviewing early February for county CAO. So that's moving forward. Chamber of Commerce is having their levy breakfast on February the 8th. And a couple of things of note. If you didn't manage to see, Bob Runciman was nominated for the Order of Ontario, or will be awarded the Order of Ontario. So Mr. Runciman, a longstanding MPP for our area, as well as a senator and a tireless advocate for people in our region, and well respected through both parties, and all parties, I should say, and across party lines, and has done an inordinate amount of work for our area, and was my first boss out of college. So I just wanted to make that known if anybody had missed that announcement. And lastly, probably the most important thing that I want to say tonight is the interesting piece about having an organization with as many employees is that we always go through this constant state of change, and there's nothing, the only constant is change. And we had one of our long-term employees, Glenn Marsden, retire at the end of 2020. Him and his lovely bride headed east to their retirement home, I believe in Nova Scotia. I don't think it was New Brunswick. I'm doubting myself now, but they had bought a home down east, and you couldn't see the dust fly. He was gone. So he was very excited to embark on that next piece of his life, and we wish him all the well. It's unfortunate because of COVID, we aren't able to gather wish him well together and publicly, but he is coming back in the spring, and we're hoping to do something maybe a little more formal at that point. Lastly, though, we received notice that our fire chief, Mr. Rick Lawson, after 46 years, has decided to hang up the boots. And as happy as I am for him, I'm sad for us, because 46 years is a long time to do anything. And Rick has given this community all of his time and his talents and his commitment to bettering new recruits and people who thought they might like to do something, who are still acting alongside of him many decades later. So Rick, we thank you for your leadership. We thank you for your commitment to our community, and we will sincerely miss you. I know you're here for a little while longer. I believe it's March the 1st is the date. But we'll put out something more formal, but we do wish you all the well in your retirement, and hopefully there's a lot of bike trips up north and a lot of fishing trips and all that kind of stuff. So if you'd like to say a few words, please do.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I've got to say that working with this council has been an honor, and it's a real privilege to work with people that have got this commitment to the township. And it goes without saying that if home is where your heart is, I guess this reflects on the people that do this job and do the council. So kudos to you for your work that you've done, and I'm going to miss it, I got no doubt, but it's time to move on. And I do appreciate your service as well to the community.
Thank you, Rick. And I know that it's not like we'll ever not see you again, but I'm pretty sure we'll probably pass you on a daily basis coming into the village. But we know you're not far, and if we ever need to pick your brain, we know where to find you.
Thank you very much. So
with that, that's all I have for the mayor's update, unless I'm missing anything, Madam Clerk. I don't think so. Okay. Did somebody say they wanted to say something? Didn't know. Okay. Okay, so the next is the in-camera portion, and that is Committee of the Whole adjourns to form in council in camera to provide or consider personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, as it pertains to human resources. I need a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Fodey and then Councillor Ohlke. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. There we go. And that is carried. So we'll move in camera and then we will come back out, but that's basically it for the agenda after in camera. So if you're listening to us online, you probably won't be much more excitement after this. So Councillor Mabee, you have something to say?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through you. And just before we do leave and the chief goes off screen, thank you very much, Rick, for all your commitment to the community now and in the future, because you will be around, as the mayor said. But thank you for all the time that you have spent. And I also have spent some scouting time with you, so I appreciated that. And it's a great pleasure to have known you in this role also. So thank you for all your expert dedication. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
It's oh yay.
Oh yay. So okay, so we are
one second, Corey. I need to get us offline and then I'm going to lock the meeting.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you, staff members. I don't think we need to keep any staff members on the line, Mr. CAO, unless.
No, all staff can depart.
Okay. Lovely. Thanks. Thank you, staff. Have a good evening. And Councillor Jamison.